Okay, so I'll try again and see what you got. Okay. Want to welcome everybody to the November 20th, 2024 West Town East Goshen Police Commission meeting. My name is Dick Pomerantz. I'm the chair. And before we begin, I'm going to ask everybody to go around. It's great to have almost a full house. And so Cody, if you introduce yourself.
Good morning, Cody Brady, East Goshen Township.
Tom Stone at Lodge.
Chris Dennis.
Jason Large.
Eric Virginia.
Desiree Rhodes.
Victor Jerry, West Town East Goshen.
David Mulner, East Goshen. Dave Delta Police Department.
Mila Carter, West Town Township Manager.
Cindy King, West Town Township Finance Director.
Brenda Bernat, Police Chief for WeGo.
Kathy Brill, Business Manager for WeGo.
And
Kate Coffin, and I work on the administration side of the police department.
it's good to have everybody here. We're going to change the order of our agenda. But before we do that, I'm going to ask everybody to stand and we'll do the pledge. I have pledged allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. And before sitting down, I'd like to have a moment of silence, and this will be, we're at an interesting time of year, both being Thanksgiving and then ultimately holiday season, Christmas, Hanukkah, and the rest of it. And so for everybody, be safe. Thank you. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the order, and I'm going to ask the chief if she will sort of take over as our master of ceremonies, and we'll go from there.
Good morning, everyone. Every year, employees of WeGo have the opportunity to nominate and vote on Officer of the Year. Our general order says that some of the qualities that you should consider before you nominate or vote is that the officers should be professional physical appearance, that they continuously demonstrate professional performance in their police duties, that they might have been the recipient of department awards or commendations, and that they demonstrate courteous cooperation with the public and the coworkers. And I'd like to think that describes everybody in the department. So when we have a nomination, we ask people to give us reasons why the officer does above and beyond. And I'd like to read to you Officer Chris Dittis' nomination that ultimately resulted in him being voted the Officer of the Year for 2023. This year, Officer Dittis has taken on extra duties in contributing to this department. For example, he volunteered to be a field training officer and has trained 2 officers that are currently outstanding members of the police department. He also volunteered to be a school resource officer alternate and has handled many juvenile calls at the schools, as well as attending events outside his normal work schedule. Officer Dittis routinely handles and independently completes the majority of his complicated investigation, including those that have very involved writing, such as search warrants, including a complex fraud investigation that he completed this year. Officer Dittis seeks to expand his knowledge in investigations and has attended numerous trainings in 2023, such as social media and cell phone investigative techniques, social media and open source investigations, and digital forensics. And to add icing to the cake, he recently completed the draft of his master's thesis. I had the opportunity to read it, and it is brilliant. And we're hoping to use the material from that to make our school resource program even better. At this time, I would like to invite Officer Dittis up to receive his award. Thank you. You can bring her with it. She can help you accept this. You are a sum total that you are in your life.
Follow up on that, I just got an email last night that. Okay.
Yes. Okay, let me get this out of the way. Let's start with a picture of that, and then we'll do like more formal pictures.
Yeah, that's fine.
Like
That's great.
police commission.
Oh.
Like
Great.
Oh. In addition to the plaque, and I will give you the cover board so it will not get scratched. In addition to this, you'll notice that Officer Dittis's name is engraved in the plaque that is in our lobby. And also, he also gets to wear this special pin on his uniform signifying that he has been designated as an Officer of the Year. So I'd like to give this to you. Well, how about we just set this for now? And I'd like to give you the podium to say a few words.
You want to start? No?
Do we intimidate each other?
No? Okay. Try to get her to talk. She's very professional. Just want to say thank you to everybody that voted for me. Tremendous honor. I greatly appreciate being considered by my fellow coworkers. Other than that, this little one's wiggle worming, so have a good day.
We'd like to get pictures with the family and the police commission and everything.
Oh, I sort of put her down because she's slipping out of my
Looking at it.
hand. She was only holding on to my taser.
Round of applause, please, for everyone.
Could you take you there if you want to?
And get some pictures.
Thank you.
Our next award, I have to kind of give the background to it. Every year, people are impacted by impaired driving. For example, from November 22nd, 2023 to January 2nd, 2024, which is only a 6-week period, there were 13,013 crashes in Pennsylvania. Of those crashes, 11% involved impaired drivers. From those crashes, there were 48 deaths and 885 injuries. Clearly, impaired driving impacts many people throughout the United States and here in Pennsylvania. When officers are asked to do proactive work, there are many ways that they can use their time. Many, many ways. For the officers who choose to do impaired driving enforcement, it's a thankless job. There is considerable amount of paperwork. There's laboratory work that has to be done, so there's a handling of evidence. And also there's additional court appearances, not to mention the fact that Pennsylvania's DUI laws change through case law almost on a weekly basis. And it is very difficult to stay abreast of the current case law. But we have officers who are dedicated to that. And today we're here to honor the best of the best. We have never had a DUI enforcement award given out before, and we thought that it was long overdue because of the impact that it has on the safety of our communities. Today, we're here to honor Officer Nick Ruggieri, who has done an outstanding job since he joined us as an officer. He is willing to dedicate the time and the energy to enforcing DUI, and he has made some exceptional arrests. Truly, he is knowledgeable on everything that you need to do DUI enforcement, everything from being very proficient at the standardized field sobriety tests to keeping abreast of the case law, especially the DL-26, which is your implied consent law, which I said changes weekly. And I give hats off to you for staying ahead of that. And when I watch your videos, you are a consummate professional. So today we're here to honor him. Just in the first 6 months of 2024, he had 5 DUI arrests, and some of them were quite complicated. So at this time, I would like to invite you up and present you with our DUI enforcement. If you'd like to invite somebody up to help you put this onto your uniform, I think that would make a good picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Come on, Dad.
Please come.
He wants you, Dad. Here you go.
You should be very proud, and I would like to invite you to take part in this. And as soon as you get the pin on, I'm going to give you the podium. So I thought that would be a nice picture.
Me too. All in favor? All in favor.
Yes. I didn't take it out of it. I was terrified of losing it. So I left it in its original container.
Make sure you push hard.
Ranger they put on. You gotta stand it.
Then
In the old stat.
They are hard to get on.
I'll definitely be the judge of that.
If you get the level.
You know, on the blind inspections.
Yeah.
There you go. There it is.
I'd like to invite you to say.
Say something.
please.
I'd just like to thank the chief and lieutenant for awarding me this work. Not much other to say than that. There's a lot of people in this department that do DUI enforcement, and to be honest, I could share this with a couple other officers. They'll probably get it in the future. And it's just about time that happens. So again, just want to thank the chief and lieutenants and thank you.
Chief, I think it's important that also be recognized that one of the DUIs that Nick had this year was a tractor trailer drive. That's a rare find.
It is, and that shows us that he's really out there looking for this. And it's scary, like you said, it's scary that we have commercial vehicles that are being operated by impaired drivers. And I know you don't want to sidetrack, but I don't know how long the little ladies will be. So can we kind of take a break and take some pictures?
Okay. An executive session was held prior to this meeting to discuss personnel issues. In addition, executive sessions were held by Police Commission on October 23rd, October 26th, October 28th, November 12th, November 13th, November 14th, November 18th. All were involved with legal, with personnel, and two involved as legal as well. Do I hear motion to approve the minutes of October 23rd, 2024?
I have a correction.
Go ahead.
Minor minutes. I was at the meeting. So
And then I have,
I know probably some people wish I wasn't here, but I was at the meeting.
Sorry.
Was it 4 o'clock or 11 o'clock?
it's 4 o'clock.
Four.
That's you.
But we did it for you.
Yeah, but then also was the meeting did it take place on the 23rd or the 28th?
Oh, that's right. We did do it.
My calendar says the 23rd, but
23rd.
okay. All right, then just with those two corrections, then I'm
All right.
good with the food.
Problem.
Second.
Of course.
So with those changes in mind, any other comments, any other questions? Gentlemen, you ready? All in favor? We'll begin with the chairman's report. When this police commission meets again in December, and the date will be changed from our usual date instead to December 18th because of the Christmas holidays. The township that I'm proud to be representing for the past 5 years and have been a resident of since 1986 will be forever changed, and dramatically so. For if all goes as planned and as scheduled, Cribbilly Farm, this exquisite, iconic centerpiece of West Down Township, will finally have been formalized as open space. After what I was recently quoted in the media as describing a many years long and winding road that could have ended up instead as 319 homes in a housing development on 322 acres. And to get from there to here at this point has been, to say the least, a huge challenge. And it still is. I want to offer our township manager, Mila Carter, all the credit in the world for having to navigate what is a true labyrinth, even at the last minute, of to get to our ultimate goal, which is formalization. And that hopefully will be next month. The story, and I'll call it more the backstory of Cribbilly, which for me goes back 6 years as chair of the planning commission with the toll development process. And then since then, with the referendum that passed, hugely successful referendum, passed 68 to 32. 2 years ago, this month, in what is the largest turnout of voters in the history of our township. That story will be for another time, another place, and another venue. But I'm raising this issue for a specific reason, and it's the reason that we're here for the police commission, for this police commission to think about, future police commission, and something that the police department should know. And that is that with the change that's going to take place with Quibbilly, which will involve hundreds of acres of open space, will create new challenges in terms of things such as safety and security. The public will not be permitted on the property until a master plan has been developed, which would be at least a couple of years. And people need to know that. But at the same time, reality is that people are excited about it. And there isn't a day that goes by that I'm not asked or other board members are not asked or our administration's not asked is that when will people have access to the property? So that becomes important. As part of this, I want to thank the chief. I want to thank Detective Diamond, and I'd like to thank Lieutenant Stafford for taking the time to do a comprehensive, actually were 2 comprehensive tours of the Quibbilly property. And the most recent one was the one that Mila and I did with Jason and John and Robin McCardle, who's actually the fellow who's farmed the property for many, many years. And until you're actually on the property, you're not aware of how massive it is and the challenges that will be created as a result of it. I want to thank both the chief as well as her people for coming up with recommendations. First of all, their observations and their recommendations as to the things that we should be thinking about as a township in terms of safety and security issues. And I'm sure that those are going to be part of our thinking and part of some action plans that need to take place. I want to thank our finance director, Cindy, for everything she's done to ensure that this is a multi-million dollar endeavor. And the way you've maneuvered that for us and hopefully will keep us on the straight and narrow. Speaking on behalf of our board, I want to thank you for that as well. I have that challenge to continue on for quite a bit of time. So this whole issue is something that I think is going to be coming up time and again over the next couple of years. The public is not aware of. I was just interviewed by the press, a member of the press this past week. And his questions were actually very good questions. And yet they were also to some naivete because it was like this, the assumption of, oh, you're going to close on this tomorrow for all intents and purposes. And then the public will be allowed on it the next day. And when I had to explain, no, not exactly. That's not the way it works. You could hear a combination of surprise and disappointment. And the public is going to have the same reaction as well. And so I have a feeling they're making phone calls that particularly our administration may be making to the police department if people become very excited and decide that their timetable is not our realistic timetable. So it's just a heads up to everybody. Okay. The second point I'd like to say is that with the myriad of events, both personal and professional of the holiday season, especially with Thanksgiving coming up next week, I want to express my personal gratitude to the entire WeGo department for their ongoing commitment to servicing, their professionalism, and most important, and we see this out here in the hallway, the compassion that you all are showing and demonstrating for the public, and particularly for those for whom the holiday season is not as celebratory than versus emotionally difficult. And what you guys are doing is tremendous, and more power to you. Finally, on a very personal note, on behalf of my wife, Bobby, and myself, I want to express to all those who are affiliated with the WeGo Police Department and my two colleagues here, plus everybody connected with both townships who are part of WeGo, a holiday season of happiness, well-being, and as I reiterate almost in everything I write, when it comes to WeGo, most important, everybody keep safe. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vice Chair report will be short, but this is my first time in the new training room with the new equipment. So I've enjoyed being on the other side of it, but I think it looks great. And I hope that it's helped with the training, the officers. I can only assume if it's this convenient for us, I can only imagine it's very helpful for them. So I think that Corporal Large was in here earlier. He's the one who led yeah. So I didn't have a chance to tell him, but please tell him it's fantastic. And then also, because I almost forgot, Chief, I sent an email, or I'm sorry, I saw the Chief last night at our township meeting. Officer Heineman has been doing a great job on our social media. So shout out to him. I know last night it's a little bit unique with the missing juvenile, but I think I saw like 650 shares. That's thousands and thousands and thousands of people, but the engagement, the photos, I think it's been fantastic. I've loved seeing the increased community engagement too from the township. So please pass along. I know the chief already did, but I think he's done a great job and he deserves public recognition. So
Devin said that he was very appreciative of your positive feedback.
it's fun having engaging the police, social media, because sometimes it can get boring and it's not. So
Again, extend a congratulations to the two recipients for the excellent work and the way you represent the department. And to both the sworn in and civilian staff of the police department, know that this commission is doing everything in its power to keep your job as safe as possible and to make sure that you do come home at the end of the tour and to give you all the necessary tools that you need to perform your duties.
Let's do the review of the approved bills for October 10th and October 22nd. Any comments from my two colleagues?
Mr. Chair, go ahead, sorry. Mr. Chairman, I ask that we go ahead and approve both the bills from October 10th and October 22nd.
I have,
Think you need one second.
well, I have a question before I have another bill.
No, we're not voting on it yet, but you need a second.
I'll second it. Is the Campbell Durant bill included in these bills?
No.
But it was,
This is November.
yeah, this is November's bill.
No, this is October 10th.
So it needs to be paid.
We have not paid that bill yet.
But it's due to be paid.
At some point, yes.
Oh.
We don't have to pay it like immediately, but at some point we do.
Well, it has to be approved.
Yes, it would be on the next list though, probably. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure it's paid.
Okay, yep. It'll be on the next list.
Okay.
We certainly we're going to pay the bill.
No, I didn't know that procedure and I want to make sure, you pay your lawyer and you pay your bondsman and so forth. And I wanted to make sure that it was not neglected.
With that, we'll do the township round. Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Let's do township roundtable. Who you gonna say?
Yeah,
Okay,
so
good.
Derek doesn't have to unmute.
Okay, good.
First off, the Milltown Dam Trail is fully operational with the parking lot. Everything's been, we have our handicap signs up down there as well as all the lots have been, all the spaces have been marked. Wanted to make you all aware of it because of patrol purposes. I don't believe that I can't remember if we passed the ordinance or not, but I think we were exploring moving that from 35 to 25. I can't remember if we voted on that or not. And then also the 1010 Hershey's Mill, the Millstone development, that I think it's gonna be 13 homes over there. The land development's underway over there, so there could be some construction equipment and, what comes along with that is, potential traffic. So Derek just wanted to make you all aware of that.
And if you experience any issues that you need us to go out there and do extra checks on equipment or anything else, just let us know.
Okay, thanks. And then I don't know what Russ Frank was talking about last night, so I'll leave that with you.
I do remember having a prior conversation back during COVID.
Lucky you. Thank you.
Mila?
The Board of Supervisors will present it with the revised settlement proposal for the Stokes Estate conditional use application. Construction of 78 homes The board approved the agreement 2-1. So I expect the land development application sometime soon. I hope for January, not before the holidays, but we'll see. The Pleasant Grove pump force main project along South Concord Road. So that should be wrapping up by the end of this month. So there's just a little bit of work that needs to be done. The road program is complete. There are some outstanding items in terms of curbs. The contractor has to come out and fix some curbing, but we don't expect them to close out roadways or do lane restrictions or anything like that. And we received a complaint about Jake breaks, and I expected the person to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting to talk a little bit about that, but she didn't come in, so I don't have any more information. So we'll just see if she comes back with the proposal on how to address it.
Sergeant Lewis has volunteered to work with you on that. The only area that he said that he had concerns that might not meet the PennDOT requirements for less than a 4% grade is right near Pleasant Grove.
I'm going to add one more thing for Westtown. I haven't discussed this actually with Mila as the township manager, but I think it fits since we're in police commission meeting. Chief, we have one more walkthrough of Cribilli. That'll take place on December 4th. It's at 8:30. We made the decision from a practical point of view, we're not going to do a complete walkthrough because it's already been done twice. However, there's a very significant part or structure as part of Cribilli that hasn't been walked through at all. I want to invite yourself and also Detective Diamond and Lieutenant Stafford, if you guys would like to join us. And it's a formal executive session walk through on the part of our township manager, our 3 board members. It'll be 30 December 4th.
Start at Stokes, or is it going to start at?
It's not Stokes. It's Cribilli.
No, you're going to meet together, or you just want to meet? Is there a location over at Cribilli?
Yes, off Old Wilmington Pike. There's a plenty of area to park there.
Yeah, there is.
Yep.
Okay.
Um,
And I can send you a calendar invite.
that sounds good. That way it's easy. With the Stokes proposal, my understanding is that they agreed to $50,000 in traffic calming devices. All that I ask is that if you're receptive to it, allow Sergeant Lewis to work with your traffic engineer. He's excited to do that.
I'll make a note of it.
And the one other thing is for future reference, Lieutenant Leahy, if our budget is approved for the purchase of the drone, there's going to be a training session that is held here after the new year. And one of the things that Lieutenant Leahy was able to get is an offer as part of the training to go over to Cribilli and to actually
Do a drone video?
Yeah.
That'd be terrific.
Oh, that's great.
Great.
That might benefit the township. So when that moves forward, there'll be conversations so you can guide us if there's anything specific that you want us to cover.
Having Sergeant Lewis work with administration and advise us on the Stokes with the traffic calming is important. We had some in the meeting during the time we did approve it with a couple of individuals who questioned as to whether $50,000 for traffic calming was sufficient. And so we had been advised by our traffic consultant that it was sufficient. So it'd be very helpful to close that loop and to get that input on that. I think it'll be helpful.
Yeah, deciding how you want to spend that money.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Chief, your report?
I just want to remind people who may be watching this video that the entire packet is available for the police commission meetings on our website in advance of the meeting. That way you'll have an understanding about what we're discussing. And also, again, I want to remind people that they have the ability, now that the township's allowed us to purchase upgrades to our technology. They can now participate remotely in our police commission meetings, and we invite people to do so. Compliments were distributed last month in per custom. We will be disseminating them again next month, and I have no concerns at this time.
Any questions? Let's move on to full-time, old business, full-time officer hiring.
On October 29th, the police commission notified me that I should not proceed with the hiring process of a replacement officer at this time. Has the police commission made a determination if or when they would like to move forward with this?
We agreed that it'd be best, since the staffing survey, the staffing project is going to be coming hopefully to a conclusion. Might have more information to work with, so we thought that'd be a better timing.
Okay, I will notify the individual that we do not foresee making a conditional offer at right now or in the foreseeable future.
Accreditation?
Did you want to cover your quotes?
I will, Chief, I think that you should probably speak to the accreditation very involved. We have two quotes, one from Lexipol and one from Lias. Is that how they say it? Lias?
Yeah.
Lias. Within Lias, there's two. And I think you all understand that now, so if you'd like to.
As we indicated at last month's meeting, you asked us to explore other avenues for accreditation, and the obvious path was looking at consultants. There were two consultants that primarily focused on. One was Lexipol, and the other one was Lias or LEAS. I'm not sure how they quoted, but the Lexipol quote is $12,499. Through a follow-up email and a Teams meeting, it was confirmed that Lexipol does not pull the proofs from our records management system. They only highlight the proofs and then put them into the software as required for accreditation. Lias said that they will provide full services for $12,000, or if you want to quote for $125 per hour, up to a maximum of $12,000. A follow-up conversation with a member of the company indicated that they do gather the proofs and highlight them. I spoke with customers of both companies, and I received extremely positive feedback on both of them. Both companies are very familiar with Power DMS, which is our accreditation software. Lias is also very proficient with Cody and the soon-to-be released Cody Pathfinder, which we will be implementing in 2025. Ultimately, you have two professional companies. I don't think you can go wrong. If you're going to compare apples to apples, you are going to be getting more work from Lias for less money. But ultimately, that's a decision for the commission to make about which vendor you would like to go with. Because Lias is slightly less money, $500, and they do work for you that the other company does not do.
You mentioned that Lias was familiar with Power DMS. Is that what you said? Is Lexipol, they're not a.
No, they're very proficient also with Power DMS.
So the comment would be both of them are proficient.
I thought I did say it. I apologize if I did not
Okay.
quote it that way.
I have another follow-up.
Go ahead.
On, there was confusion in the packet,
Correct.
because they were both like
They look-
this.
they look like-
And we thought that was a duplicate, and that's, but now I'm reviewing it, and I didn't get Lexipol, we didn't get Lexipol till last night. Yes, like that, yesterday afternoon. Well, I didn't. In one proposal from, Lias, or we'll use that one, it is open-ended. It goes $12,000, and then it says until the chief of police or that designee has approved and written more money to proceed. And explain, I somewhat understand it. I don't know whether my fellow commissioners want to understand it so that we can make a fair and objective decision. When we say pull things, explain, so, not a long explanation, but please explain what exactly you mean by that.
There are stages to accreditation. First of all, you must have a policy.
Right,
Then you must demonstrate proof that you're complying with the policy that you're saying that is your policy.
right.
So for example, if we say that our policy is, I'm thinking of an example that in accordance with the requirements, we do unannounced inspections of our evidence room and we do audits on an
Gotcha.
annual basis. What you do is you pull proofs that show that you're
You've
actually
done it.
doing that. Some proofs are very simple, but when you're looking for things that would be demonstrated in the report of an officer, that tends to be more time consuming. So you would have to pull up a report and say, this report proves that the officer checked the back of a car before he put a prisoner in it, and then he did all these steps. So
And that's a random proof, is that correct?
it should be random.
It is a random proof that they ask for a proof here and a proof there.
Yeah, you have to have, for every single accreditation standard, you must have two proofs per year, and it's a 3-year cycle, so you would have 6 proofs for that individual standard.
And how many standards are there now?
There's roughly 133. Some of them we do not have to comply with because we don't have like a prisoner setting.
So then of the 133, that's not a true, when you say you have to do proofs for every policy, that's not exactly, because some policies don't.
In that case, you do what's called a letter to the file, saying it's not applicable to this agency.
Okay. Is there a requirement by Pennsylvania law or by the Accreditation Commission that there be a person within the department that's titled accreditation manager?
I will say that PLEAC does require that somebody inside the agency holds that title.
So the answer then is it is a requirement,
It is a requirement through PLEAC, which is the accreditation agency.
right? So if you didn't have it, they wouldn't accredit you. So it's a requirement then.
Yeah.
Make it simple. It's a requirement.
Okay.
Is it a requirement who that person has to be?
No,
So it's a title that could attach to either a sworn or civilian personnel within the department. Is that correct?
it is.
And it's a title
Yes.
and it's a paper so that we comply with the rule.
Well, it tends to be a little bit more than that. I could go into the nuances, but I think I would bore you.
I don't want to be bored.
No, I didn't think so. But on its surface, yes. If you hire an accreditation consultant, they will do all of the duties normally assigned to accreditation manager, but they will still require that there is somebody in the agency that is their point of contact. And that is generally who the agencies are listing as their accreditation
Right.
manager.
But it could be anybody,
Yes,
sworn
sir.
or civilian.
Yes, sir.
Is the role of the point of contact titular, or is it
That's good.
true oversight role?
In the past, it has been a true oversight role, but I've seen other agencies explore other options where they are merely the point of contact for the accreditation consultant.
And it's sort of following up something that Tom was asking, but or he said. And so I'm going to plead guilty to it. I'm not an expert at this stuff. I would almost look to yourself or Kathy, or tell me who the right people are, that in this setting, we can get your advice, and yours meaning collective advice, that based on these 2 propositions or proposals, and then within the one proposal, there's 2, the hourly versus the fixed rate. And by the way, is that fixed rate not to exceed 12? Okay, because it doesn't say that, it just says 12, if I'm recall.
Yeah.
But that's the understanding of the not to exceed.
The only thing that I want to be clear on is within those 2 quotes within Leah's.
Yeah.
Is that, one is as long as we are caught up on year 1 and 2, and I don't have that information. The chief might, if we're caught up on proofs for 1 and 2, then they're just going to do 3, year 3.
Okay.
So that I don't have an answer for that.
I'm sorry, your input is to you advise, if this were you advising us to the pros and the cons of making the decision between the 2 firms, and then within that one firm, hourly versus non-hourly, or the fixed rate? Can you give us your thoughts?
One individual that we spoke to said that pulling proofs is 4 hours a week. And I would say if you're trained and you know that agency's policies, I think that could be true. My concern is that we are looking at potentially using somebody in the admin unit who has no familiarity with our policies. And therefore it may take them longer. Based upon that, I probably would go with Elias for the full 12,000, simply because they are going to provide that service. And that would allow anybody who steps in as an accreditation manager to slowly orient themselves into it. But like I said, if either proposal, I got incredible feedback from their customers. I did not get negative feedback on either company. I just thought that, you know, since we are making a transition in the department, not to use a civilian accreditation manager as a full accreditation manager and using a consultant, that it might be a nice way to ease into it for that individual rather than getting hit with an enormous amount of responsibility out of the gates.
And on the issue of hourly versus, so you're saying to go with the 12,000, this may be a naive question. Is that 12,000 a year for the 3 years, or is that 12,000 fixed rate for
I
3
believe
years?
that's 12,000 for each year.
Well, I thought the intention was that it was just gonna be year
One
three,
year,
yeah. I think it's a 12-month.
Yeah.
12 months, it's,
12
okay,
months.
that's fine.
If the person who says they would be the record puller, you're estimating 4 hours a week. If they come up and it's 6 hours a week, does that $125 an hour kick in?
No, my understanding is for Leah's. Lexipol will not pull your proofs. So no matter what amount of time it takes for your person assigned to pull proofs, that's money out of your pocket. You're paying their salary. Leah's will pull the proofs for you regardless of how much time it takes.
That comes, that's in a sense.
That's included in the contract.
This may be the follow-up to the question, and forgive me for asking something that may bore these two guys, but I am interested. When you say pull the proofs, what does that mean?
Basically, you say, okay, let me go down with the evidence custodian and find proof that that the chief did 2 unannounced inspections this year. They will go into the log sheet, they'll take a picture, they'll upload it, and then that will be the proof. If it is an investigative report, it's going to take longer to do, because let's say that you have something unusual, like a strip search of a juvenile. That is an extremely rare thing, and you might have to go through many, many reports until you find one that shows that you followed your policy for doing strip searches of juveniles. And if it's a more common occurrence, it doesn't take as long, but some of the examples might be a juvenile that's held beyond 6 hours, which is a deviation from Pennsylvania law that is sometimes necessary. But if you do that, you have to document that in your reports. So trying to find a report, you're going to have to pull up every single report that involves a juvenile and read the narrative to see whether you have this scenario or not. And then for every single standard that you have to prove, you're going to have to do that for every investigative report.
Wearing my consultant hat, I was asked by a client once, I'm going to sort of turn around and ask the following. If one consulting firm is offering less for more, or put it this way, offering less to do less for this approximately the same amount, and the other one is offering and saying, we'll do all the following, including the pulling, why would anybody choose the one that's offering to do less?
I'm not really sure, but I wanted to present both options to you. I was under the impression that Lexipol could be contracted to pull proofs. that wasn't in the contract. And then when I saw that the price was slightly more
Yeah.
than what Leas was offering, but they're offering to do more work for less money.
Just a quick question. Did Lexipol tell you why they don't pull proof?
I think it has to do with the fact that they use individuals that may not be CJIS qualified, and therefore they can't go into your records management systems. They're not authorized to do that. Plus also there is if you're in there looking around, there's potentially some issues. If you were to accidentally delete something, there would be liability associated with that. But no, I didn't specifically ask that question. That's what I'm assuming.
So we don't know the true answer to that question.
But I did ask Leas, like, if you're telling me that you pull proofs, are you CJIS qualified? Yes, we have credentials that prove that we are certified to be in a CJIS restricted database. That's your secure,
I know what it is.
okay,
Okay, so,
but they don't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
go with that. Do you have any questions?
That was my motion.
Yeah, good. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move forward with Leas for accreditation for the next 12 months, for the amount of $12,000.
I'll second it with a caveat not to exceed in any way $12,000.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. Any questions, comments, thoughts? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Commercial vehicle scales.
We were asked to put this on this month's agenda after last month's discussion. I'm not sure what the police commission wants to discuss this month, but try to answer any questions you have regarding the quotes or the way that in the past, the police commission and the townships have indicated that the money split for commercial vehicle enforcement has been done in different ways based upon the preference of the commission and the townships. If there is an objection from one township that they're not getting the proceeds of spending money, in this case it would be Muscogin, that can certainly be readdressed and reexamined as it has been in the past.
I don't vote.
Go ahead.
I made a motion at the last meeting that this matter be tabled. I'd like to continue that motion to table any action whatsoever on the scales. I didn't know about the money thing, so that's way above my pay grade. But reluctantly pay that $6,000 or $1,500, whatever it is, until we determine from a study that we're getting ready to get, and then the true feasibility of the $66,000 for scales. So I move it to be tabled until 2025 when it's appropriate to bring it back up.
I'm just going to make one suggestion before Cody seconds it, is that it should be a clean motion and we can leave out any of the, we'll take your comments in about, into consideration about reluctantly and allowed. We don't have to say that in the motion.
Yeah. Just one quick comment. I also agree that we just moved this till 2025, mostly because we passed our preliminary budget last night that did not include the purchasing of these scales. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I move that we continue to table this motion of purchasing commercial vehicle scales until next year. And thank you for the work that was done on the proposals.
May I ask a question for clarification? I'm assuming that our bill, Kathy, is up until the end of 2024 or was it paid? It was paid. So we expect another bill when?
January, we'll pay for a quarter. January, February, March, we'll be paying $1,500.
Yeah.
So we'll pay that.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You did as a motion, Tom, do you want to second that?
Yes.
Okay. And do you now want to make your comments, or we'll take it at face value? You already made your comment.
Well, I didn't know that you weren't allowed to say what was on your mind, and I didn't know that I couldn't say the word reluctantly, so
Well, I reluctantly suggested that we change the wording slightly.
and I reluctantly agree.
All in favor? Summary of reactive call for.
As a result of Dave Ware's request, I have provided data. He said 3 years. I actually ended up giving you almost 5 years worth of data. I gave you 2023, 2022, 2021, 2018, which is pre-pandemic, so that you have a comparison, and year-to-date up through the end of third quarter for 2025. My summary, I believe, is probably the most, I mean, we could look at numbers all day long, and I'll be happy to answer questions on the data that was provided, but this is something that you, the commission has been receiving for decades in this format, so I thought we would stick with this format. And what I did was I backed out the proactive calls and only showed reactive calls. Some of the things that popped out at me is, as I indicated, my data analysis. I'll wait till Kathy gets there. It's a lot of data. I'm sorry, but I thought you didn't want just sheer numbers, that you might want to look at the categories of the incidents. So that gives you some idea about what's going on. I'm not sure. It's sideways. Well, you know what? I'm going to cover it anyway. Both townships have experienced an increase in reactive calls over the time period analyzed, but Westtown's increase has been more significant. For example, Westtown's reactive calls increased 18.55% between 2018 and 2023, while East Goshen's has only increased 2.96% during the same time period. But what is really interesting is that when you back all of this proactive material out, if you were to look at strictly the PPUs from that, East Goshen has received roughly 58% of the calls for service or reactive calls. Westtown is at 40, and then you have other agencies that we've given roughly 2% of our hours to. So RSS constitute that. This is a little different than when you're looking at PPUs, because PPUs look at all hours of service, regardless of what the category is. If you're looking at strictly reactive, this is surprising. On one hand, you see that Westtown's reactive calls are slowly rising over time. You would expect that the ratio would reflect that. But at this point, it does not. And my caveat that I threw in there is we don't know what the long-term result is. We have 1 year where we have not had Thornberry as a customer, and we only have really looked at 75% of that year's data. So we don't know what's going to be coming, but I think that Dave was asking for this because the townships at some point will be discussing their contract. And I know that there's a discussion about possibly getting rid of PPUs, possibly moving in another direction. And I think this is why Dave was asking for this data. So what you have is some very confusing data at this point, if you're strictly looking at reactive. Traditionally, Westtown has asked for more proactive hours than East Goshen does, simply because they have more traffic complaints. But as you're moving forward and you're starting to decide where you want to go, I think that this data is at least important to look at, even though we have a very small set of data. And I would never make a judgment based upon 9 months of data.
I have a series of questions, if you don't mind. Let's assume we're starting all over. And you've provided, by the way, thank you for doing this.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it. I found it very helpful and confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is confusing.
What should we be looking at? And what do other police departments look at?
Put you in the spot.
And I'm going to say this once again, I've been saying this for 12 years. Most regional police departments are getting away from PPUs, and they're looking at different methods for determining contracts for the agencies that own the police department. I could provide a list, and I really think that as you go forward as part of your process, you should talk to other regional departments about what they do. PPUs are falling out of favor. They were very popular when this department was formed back in 1981, but it's not as popular. They're looking because it, as you have all stated numerous times to me in meetings, it doesn't make sense to try to manipulate the hours of service simply to fulfill a contract or to keep everything financially stable. So my recommendation is that you start to look at what other regional departments are doing and see if that's something that appeals to you.
Do you mind if I give a little history?
No, please.
So in 1981, up until 2003, there was a different formula. It wasn't PPUs yet until 3. They looked at the road mileage, population, and the number of police calls. We used to get that number from the radio room. Of course, we have it now ourselves, but they looked at that, and for the longest time, it was 60-40. Then we went to PPUs. When we went to PPUs, I believe it was Chief Dumont and myself and one of the lieutenants went around to all the regional departments to see how they did it. Because the concern at the time was it didn't matter how many calls there were, it's how much time we're spending on those calls. One township might have 4 rapes and the other township doesn't have any. It's still 4 calls to, nothing. So anyway, we went around and that's where PPUs started. And again, like the chief said, they're starting to fall out of grace right now. But if you were to go back to population, mileage, square miles, number of police calls, that would be quite easy to do. It would save the PPU process for sure.
Mary Lee, before she left, did an analysis comparing the PPUs to calls for service, and she found that it was pretty close.
Right, we were off by maybe 1 or 2% between PPUs and the old process. So that's for you to decide, but yeah, if we go back to the number of calls and the population and whatnot, I think someone said, I think John Stafford said, for fire cost, sometimes they do the
Population density?
not the density, but the salaries of the people that live in the township. What do they call that?
Oh, income, so
Yeah.
they do it household income,
Household income,
Hmm.
population, things like that. They added that into.
so it's all like census data and demographics,
Right.
and then geographic location of it.
Let's assume that there were a conference of police commissions of regional departments around the country. And they were holding a conference and the conference was going to be on this issue. Who would be the resources that they would bring in as consultants who would be saying, here's what's going on around the country and here's what they do and here's the experience?
That would be an answer for Tom.
Gotta be very careful in that response. In the terrifically complex business of policing, you can't determine what that radio is gonna say to you on the next call and how much it's gonna take. So where you might take more for East Goshen call and so forth and so on. Sometimes it puts the police officers and the people who have to crunch the numbers in an awkward position to try to make the numbers work. Some people call it smoke and mirrors, to get the numbers to work or to try to come within some semblance of what it's supposed to be. I think the true measure of police service for the jurisdictions that this department has the privilege to serve is a degree of service and the favorability that the customer, which is the citizens, have with the service. And it's one thing that I've said repeatedly, and I would say it to the both commissions if given the opportunity, that I have found no really complaints about the service. In fact, I applaud the service that they get in it. And so to continue maybe with a PPU, if is that a political decision or operational decision? And I see I'm getting some agreement from the side of the room. It's a burden. I would rather see the police in this department on the street doing proactive patrol than sitting down with a Texas Instrument computer trying to. I had to do that in early in my police career, account for 480 minutes on a worksheet, and all we did was sit and when we could have been doing proactive police work. I think Dick had a good point. What would other people say? And I think, also that measure of the degree of service, while it may have been good at some point, I don't know whether that's the best utilization for the person, I can't say manpower, the police personnel. I know that, it's a long answer, but I think it's an important answer, that usually Monday through Friday, the sergeant comes in to do paperwork, maybe 3 hours a day or something like that. And probably PPUs, I would say it's probably, somebody has to do it. Is that time best spent doing that, or would that time be better spent in an area that has been identified in East Goshen or West Town on proactive patrol? So I think it's something that certainly should be looked at.
From the township's perspective, both sides, in general, when and it's basically for the audience, because they don't have access to the numbers in front of them. Do both townships have the same proportion? I don't mean the exact same numbers, but percentages of reactive versus proactive.
Now, I'd have to do the calculations on this, but based upon the fact that this shows that for this year, reactive was roughly 40% West Town and roughly 58% East Goshen. But when you look at the PPUs, it was a completely different number. And we're going to cover that in a few minutes. The ratio that is desired by the townships at this point is 44.5% West Town and 55.5%. Neither our PPUs nor our reactive calls for service are in that ratio.
What does that say to you? If I'm, put me in your shoes.
It was eye-opening for me. I assumed, because I have been calculating calls for service as a total, and I've been seeing that everybody's going up a little bit, but West Town's going up at a faster rate. I assumed that when I backed out the reactive and just looked at reactive, that I would see a similar ratio in that. And I'm not. And again, I only have 9 months I'm looking at. I expected to see that same trend. So that tells me that West Town is getting more proactive work than East Goshen is. And that may be associated with the fact that you have roughly 23, 24 schools compared to what East Goshen has.
Can you walk through that? Just explain that as well. In other words, what do the 23 or 24 schools have to do with proactive versus reactive?
Because we do school checks, business checks, patrol checks, bank checks. Those are some of the proactive things that we do. West Town traditionally has more traffic complaints, so you're going to probably get more traffic enforcement because of those complaints, particularly from traffic safety unit. So if we look at the hours for proactive, I'm going to assume that because of those known facts, you're getting, and again, this is off the top of my head. I don't know what the data is going to look like.
I understand.
But I've always been told to back out the proactive. If you want me to do a reverse analysis and focus on that. And that's why I put in there under 3. It is important to note that the analysis above only involves reactive calls for service. Traditionally, the townships have expected proactive service from WeGo, and I go into them all and I list that. Because you have more schools, because you have more traffic complaints, I'm going to assume that you get more proactive. But the analysis may prove me wrong.
Who gets the most radio calls? When somebody calls the 911 center, does East Goshen, do you respond to more 911 calls for East Goshen or for West Town?
Definitively, it's East Goshen. That's why we define reactive as anything where there's a call. And that's why I'm telling you the ratio is like 58 to 40.
And for reference though, Tom, it's the she's nil with you retired.
Yes.
Yeah, but as far as actual 911 calls from the 911 sent to the police car, East Goshen gets more than West End.
I don't know that for definitive fact. I know that reactive calls, they have more. We would have to go in and see what the source of the calls are. Sometimes the residents call the station directly. Sometimes they walk in. Sometimes we get it through Crime Watch or something else. But when we did the data dump from the CAD, which is the county's records management system, it did, in probably the majority of the cases, articulate what the source of the call was. So we could look at that. But I'm going to think that there's a very strong similar trend between reactive calls and true 911 calls.
But wouldn't there be more calls overall for and from East Goshen? They got a lot larger population.
They do have a larger population.
And the demographics are a lot different.
Yeah.
The population density, that was one of the things that we were asked to pull for the consultant. And surprisingly, the median income for East Goshen dropped.
Okay.
And Westtown, it went up from the last time I pulled it from the census data. So you have more population, larger territory, an increased population density, and
More commercial.
pockets. Yeah, pockets in there where you have lower income housing.
In East Goshen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically anything along 3 tends to have a lower median income than your outskirts. But
So if my 2 other board members were sitting here, they would probably turn around because they would have had some of this info. But they're going to turn around and say, could you kind of sum it up, at least what we know now in one paragraph? What message are you trying to convey to us?
the message I'm trying to get, this is a good question. Because that's what I thought about is we have been so focused on PPUs. This is a different way of looking at it, but unfortunately, we have 1 year of data and not even a full year's of data. As you go forward and decide what your contract is in the future, this is going to be a very complex issue. And I don't have any simple answers.
Does
You're
that,
going to have to decide what you want and how you want to pay for it.
well, it's interesting because then you raise a really good point, and that is that at least in my mind, we don't have sufficient data, at least in terms of chronologically for the year. And secondly, even if we did, it would only be a limited amount. Does that suggest that, and when it comes to our contract between the 2 townships, that, and as it relates to WeGo, maybe we should be thinking about doing something on a temporary basis, and at least to gather more information. It might take another year, and then maybe we come back with a contract 2 years. I'm making this up theoretically, and say, okay, 2 years from now we'll have more information, and maybe then it'd be a more informed type of decision as to the nature of the relationship between the 2 townships.
From a statistical analysis, using 2 years of data is a risky proposition. Kathy, when she did her PPUs, looked at many, many years. You guys pulled data for probably at least 10, 12 years and looked at it as part of your PPU analysis.
Mean when we started with PPUs?
You looked at calls for service for many years.
Oh, many years, yeah, yeah. We still basically count calls for service, but the PPU is based on time.
But the flip side of it, I'm trying to play devil's advocate to some extent, but a real devil's advocate is that if two years isn't sufficient amount of time to develop sort of some kind of substantive response as to what this thing should look like, and we only got 9 months now. What does that say about the nature of the contract that's between us and that we should be thinking about? I'm trying to close the loop there.
You need to be very flexible. There for a while, the thought process was between the townships, We're gonna set the PPUs, and if it goes a little off, oh, well, we'll adjust it. moving
That's a
forward.
0.5% thing.
Yeah, and no, that was before that. There was no payment. It was what it was.
Okay.
And then the township said, wait a second. We should not be paying for more service than we're receiving. So they put that provision into the contract that if it goes more than 0.5% over
Yeah,
the desired ratio of the PPUs, the township that receives more pays more.
right.
So I think that's gonna be something that your CFOs are gonna have to give you advice on.
I can tell you just, I kind of calculated a little bit. So in 2023, it looks like East Goshen had 52% and Westtown 36%. And in 2022, East Goshen 53% and Westtown 35%. Now, that doesn't take Thornbury into account. They were somewhere between 10 and 12%, but it still looks like East Goshen has consistently been receiving a lot more of the percentage of the reactive calls.
So this is a different way of looking at data. We've never looked at just reactive calls. So that's why when Dave asked me to do this, I was actually excited to do it because it's a different way of looking at the data. Because we always look at proactive and reactive together. Now we're just breaking out reactive. But the caveat I put in there is both the townships want proactive, but deciding what that looks like moving forward is going to be a discussion for the townships.
Nice question, Chief. Walk me through this. So let's say hypothetically East Goshen did have, like, what if Cindy's numbers are correct here, that East Goshen had more reactive calls, but Westtown had more proactive call, correct? Hypothetically, wouldn't some of those proactive calls prohibit or limit the amount of reactive calls that could have been had?
We don't really know from analysis what we prevent by doing proactive things.
Priority, yeah.
It's the nature of the beast, but the argument could be made that there is a correlation, particularly one of the things we do very definitively in Westtown is we sit at our hotspots on 202. How many crashes and fender benders did we avoid by having officers present? So that argument could definitively be made, but there is not a mathematical calculation.
Very excited for this when both townships are asking you questions. I'm trying to be like,
You do by demographics and population?
I may,
well, the growing population of.
I may be an outlier. So with due respect to the two finance directors, who clearly are really enjoying this intellectually, it doesn't do anything for me. Because at the end of the day, I keep going back to the same question as a layman, but as part of the police commission, what the hell does this mean?
This means that the data that we have been, because we have been relying heavily on PPU data.
Yeah.
Without differentiating whether it's reactive or proactive. This is another way to look at it. And the townships, as part of this consultant study, are going to be making decisions with the police commission about what police services look like moving forward. And I'm sorry to throw a monkey wrench in this, but I found this analysis kind of eye-opening because I didn't expect it to look like this.
Right.
So
But I
somebody,
think from a finance standpoint, I would say, of course, this would benefit Westtown Township.
Yeah.
But, should they be weighted differently? Should a reactive be weighted differently than a proactive?
Good question.
That's a good question.
How about,
Would hate to calculate
if
that.
you combine that idea of reactive, if you combine the idea of reactive and proactive in PPUs, how about thinking about starting January 1, when the officers do their dailies? They used to have to do a PPU for every minute of the 12 hours. They know the difference between a proactive and a reactive call. How about if they just do the PPU for the reactive part? And then all the numbers we get are all reactive, and we can compare them very easily after the first month even. And they just shift timing their proactive calls.
My argument would be then is if 9 months of data is not enough for doing both, then would 1 month really change?
Well, what I mean is in 1 month, you're gonna be able to see some numbers without proactive in it, is what I mean. You would still need to do it for a year at least.
Can I put a qualitative question here? And that is that the difference between the chief and the officers who are here. I'm using officers in the global sense. You know what it means for proactive, to actually do proactive and reactive. Sort of building on what Cindy just talked about. In terms of what it means for a law enforcement officer to do that, to carry out proactive versus reactive. I was going to actually ask it in a different way and say is, which is more valuable to the public?
And that is always the question that has been asked since the beginning of time. And I can't give you a definitive answer. If you ask a resident, would you rather the officers prevent the crime or do a great job investigating and arrest the person responsible? Uniformly, everybody says, I want you to prevent it. But there is no analysis that shows you truly how much you prevented by your proactive work. There's no analysis. I think that our residents, based upon the compliments that we get, they value the proactive. I get a lot of comments back from people like, hey, I saw you were like, the individual was complaining about Shiloh Road at 2 township meetings ago. She sent a very nice Crime Watch submission saying, I've seen your officers and I really appreciate that. So I think our residents value both. And I know that you don't want to spend money, but again, I go back to what Thornberry did about 12, 14 years ago, sending out a customer satisfaction survey. What do you value? What do you want? That might help your townships and the police commission make decisions about what you're going to do moving forward. Because then you'll be able to say, hey, we can't give you everything, but this, according to the survey, is what you value the most.
If I took the numbers and sort of put that aside, because numbers are numbers, and when you read, like when you give the reports to the both boards, and in this month there were X, 1,000, 2,000, whatever the number would be of I guess it's calls for service at that point.
That's everything.
Yeah. I want to put that aside for a minute. If you were to ask the average person, I can't speak for East Goshen, I can speak, I think, pretty definitively for West Town. The average person in West Town who resides in West Town doesn't think that there's a lot of crime, what you guys would call crime. How much crime is there? Actual crime is there?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I broke this down by classification, so that if you wanted to go back and look at, and again, previous analysis I've done, I broke down part 1 and part 2. We don't do that anymore. Now that we're in NIVERS, we're using different classifications.
Yeah.
But for most people, when they think of part 1 crimes, they think of a more serious crime.
Right.
But that's why I included the incident classification so that you could look for yourself and go, wow, East Goshen might have more calls, but most of it's ambulance calls, or most of what West Town. And the one thing that I've seen is that when I first arrived, West Town did not have as much crime calls, but we're starting to see a modification of that.
Yeah, that number's going up.
Yeah.
But I've said for more than months that West Town and East Goshen ought to be extremely, extremely proud of the police service that they get, because the crime in these 2 jurisdictions, it is picture perfect as far, and I'll go back and really, I'm not gonna show my true age, but when you look at part 1 and part 2 or whatever NIVERS calls it, what a great community to live in because of the police service.
I mean, that's why we're always rated like top 50 in the state for.
Yeah.
state-
So
Yeah.
when and all of the, proactive, reactive, do this and do that. But when you get to the bottom line, what the men and women do when they're out there pushing the black and whites is really showing the true level of service that the people are given, because the crime stats, the true crime stats, now, an ambulance calls, where you respond to ambulance calls, some jurisdictions don't.
Correct.
So that's that's a number in a column. And we all know that. We know a lot of these are numbers in columns. But the true police calls and so forth, man, what a safe place and good quality of life that these men and women provide.
Tom is completely correct.
Thank you.
When you look at our crime stats for being roughly an hour outside Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
Are extraordinarily low. The fact that when you look at our ratio between compliments and complaints
Oh, it's
shows that there is no doubt our citizens are very satisfied with the police
Absolutely.
services. They could not be happier. This entire discussion is not about that issue. It's about how the townships are going to
Value.
pay for the department. Make a decision about what you want from the department and how you're going to split the cost for that.
So there is no magic formula for this.
No, unfortunately.
I hope they would take into consideration that safety.
50/50.
Yeah.
So let me go back to one last question. That is, and this is the one that keeps hitting, maybe on an intellectual basis, but maybe it's more than intellectual. The one thing that Westtown has is I think probably compared to the rest of the state, we have an overabundance of schools. Would it be fair to say, or is this too much of an assumption, that whatever we're seeing in the area of police work necessary, despite the fact that the great work of the SRO and all that kind of stuff, we're going to continue to see, because we're seeing it all over the country. When you talk about schools, crime, in quote, whatever you want to call, however you want to define it, is going to continue to increase. It's not going to decrease.
Crime in schools.
Yeah.
I wish you could read Officer Dittis's master's thesis. That's what his topic was. And it was a look at whether having SROs in the schools causes crime stats to go up by the nature. And I don't want to steal his thunder, but he did an excellent job of researching, and primarily what he said is if the SRO program is done correctly, your crime stats should not go up, because this is not a pipeline to prison mindset, that we are looking for diversionary programs. But the one thing that I have to say is we will always have more calls to the schools
Got it.
moving forward until we address some of the issues that occurred during the pandemic. The mental health calls, the issues that we're having with students significantly went up during the pandemic, and we are still seeing the aftermath. Maybe over time, it'll start to level out and we won't have as many calls, but I can't say that it's all crimes that we're responding to in the schools.
So you're not saying more assaults. You're not saying.
We are.
That's the kind of thing when I refer
Okay,
to crime.
I will say that we are seeing more assaults. We are seeing, I don't know, what do you think about thefts? It's pretty even, maybe a little bit more. We've been working with the school to address that, because a lot of that is just kids not putting locks on lockers. But
Social media, definitely, yeah.
Are they reportable thefts or just?
they're making a
thefts?
report. It's like stealing somebody's wallet, stealing somebody's cell phone.
Oh, that's a
Air,
theft.
you know, the AirBuds or pods or whatever they're called. But yeah, a lot of what we're getting is bullying, social media threats. That has definitively.
Well, I think Dick brought up a good point. Are you seeing physical crime increase? Where you're talking about simple felonious assaults or that type of crime that is more than pulling somebody's pigtails or something.
I would say that we are seeing assaults go up. And what is kind of odd is that we primarily used to see all the assaults primarily at the high school. Now we're seeing,
Middle school.
middle school.
Are these physical assaults or bullying assaults?
Physical assaults.
Physical assaults.
Yeah.
Are they being prosecuted?
In many cases, no, because it's mutual, or the parents don't want to go that way. And there's a multitude of reasons.
But they're being reported.
They're being reported.
Okay.
I think First of all, I really appreciate, this is probably the most time we've ever spent on one particular topic and for good reason. I think it also gives this particular police commission and future police commissions to very quickly start thinking about this and get some of the material. Can we ever get access to the thesis?
I'll ask Chris. I think he'd be happy to share it. It was very well written.
That'd be great. I think
I will ask Chris if he's willing to share it.
That'd be very helpful.
What school was
Can I
it
ask
for?
a question?
Sure.
So what are the schools contributing to the SROs?
They contribute.
$75,000 a year.
Is that it?
Total or each school?
We only have one SRO at one school. And it's 75,000, but there's a cost of living increase that's built into that contract. So I don't know exactly what we got this year. Do you know?
The 75 this year, I think. I haven't seen the cost of living. I thought it was in the contract that
Yeah, it is.
I know it's in the contract, but I didn't know we were the ones that were supposed to be figuring that out.
I thought it was 3.2.
Is it 3.2?
I'm sure of it from the.
Okay. Well, then I have to change it.
It's somewhere along that line. So, yeah, if you could reach out.
Can I-
We have a different.
Sorry, but Kathy, let's go back to the question I asked.
I have the new budget, but,
Just out of interest, is that 70, because that 75,000 didn't show up in the future budget. Did we get paid 75,000? School boards were supposed to be approved up to now. And I believe it's a 4-year contract. It's a 4-year, till 27. I know it's 4 years, but I just can't remember when it started.
Last year, because we got a $75,000 grant first year.
Okay. Okay, so
We didn't get one the second year.
speaking of, since you're talking about the budget, we don't have it on the agenda because it was just changed last night. But, I can hand this out to them. The boards of supervisors just have to come back to me to make any further changes. You've already presented a budget.
Yeah.
To them, so we're good, but.
I do have a question about the budget. So when we're talking about the accreditation, is that going to change? I could go into lots of scenarios, but bottom line is that going to change the police staff budget at all?
It should, as mentioned before that night, at the top of the budget, it said 96,000 of salary and benefits is in there for an accredited manager. If they decide to hire the consultant, obviously that would come out, but I haven't gotten that information yet, so I need to leave it in.
Was that still in the budget?
And, yeah,
So it went from about 100,000 to 25,000. Well, I'm sorry, 12.
Yeah.
So that's even better. That's
so
good, man.
now that it's approved, that can be added into,
Device.
unless the chief, I don't know how you feel about, you want to just have the or admin and.
I'm going to leave that to you because you're the best person to analyze what the workload is.
I
And
think
if,
we'll be okay.
okay,
I think we'll be okay and we'll see how the year goes.
It's open though. You don't want to shut that door, do you?
No, I don't.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to shut that door. I don't think.
I'd like to give it a try since, we're hiring a consultant.
Okay, let's move on to.
Mr. Chairman, sorry too, but because of the great discussion, I will have to continue via Teams. I have a special appointment at 1 and I did not anticipate the thorough discussion, so my apologies.
Let's go with officer.
Yeah, okay, I'll just call.
Comments. Any comments from the,
One quick comment, just on the budget, and from an officer standpoint, I want to put this out there. I think this gets lost in the money stuff, and obviously your seat's much different than my seat. Regional policing, by and large, Kathy, back me up, is the most cost-effective way to run an agency.
Yes.
So when your residents call 911, what's our budget projected?
10 million.
They're getting a $10 million police department for 50%. That's West Goshen residents, what they're paying, Westchester, West Whiteland, and all the other ones that are comparable in our size. They're paying full free. You guys are paying, what is say 50/50? That's not the case, but.
Let's not
I
feel that.
That's what I'm saying, just for the sake of argument, it's 60/40, whatever the numbers are. It is significantly less than anybody else in the area.
got it.
And your residents, they want police officers in their neighborhoods. They want, when they call the police to come, we can handle the medical call at the facility and the murder suicide we had 3 weeks ago. That's what they're getting. And I don't want to lose that in the grand schemes of a 0.5% here, 1% there, even though I know it adds up to tens of thousands of dollars. We're still hundreds of thousands of dollars ahead of every agency that's in the region.
So I'll respond for myself, okay? Nothing as part of this conversation should have in any way inferred anything different than what you just said.
Right.
Is that helpful?
Sure.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Of course, I can't speak for East Ocean.
Second, just an point of view, that's all.
Any other comments?
I'll just second what Hale said. He said it perfectly.
Second.
I'll just second what Detective Hale said. He said it perfectly.
Great. Stats reports.
I think we've spent enough time on staff.
Careful on weekends and
Let it go.
Yeah.
Overtime report.
To my, for the month most currently being reported, there was 473 hours of overtime, which is outside the average or the norm. There was 57.5 hours of operational overtime that ranged from everything from a murder suicide to sexual assaults to the fact that we had a 28 hours of overtime associated with the dignitary protection when Jill Biden came to the area. Overall, it was just a very bad month. Unavoidable. When you look at the average for the last 3 months, it's 296.33 hours. The average for the last 6 months is 246. The average for year to date is 217.09 hours of overtime. So what we're seeing is a slow trend upwards. In August through September, we had a really good month for overtime, meaning we had little of it. And the last month, we just had a lot of operational things that simply could not be avoided.
The dignitary detail. This is not meant to be a political question, it's just to understand. Was that for political purposes or was that an event that the First Lady attended that had nothing to do with politics? It was personal or something like that?
No, it's for political.
Do we get compensated in any way, shape or form for any of that?
Nope, we have been asking since the dawn of time, and the answer from the Secret Service has always been no. I know that when I worked for the state police, because we were responsible for shutting down the roadways, every time the RNC, the DNC, the G20, Governor's Conference, National Governor's Conference, or any political visit, our budget took a hit because we were being tapped over and over and over and over again. Unfortunately, there is no way to recoup that.
And the quid pro quo is that, and this is insane, but I'll read it. If we just turn around and said, is that in the absence of being compensated, this particular police department will not provide that service.
You really can't do that.
I know, like I said, it was
Because
insane.
although we are providing dignitary protection,
Yeah.
our primary focus is the safety of our residents. And should anything happen, whether the crashes or an active shooter or whatever, our primary focus is protecting our residents.
Okay. Any questions, Tom, on that?
No, the only thing I've noticed is on the overtime, the sick seem to be going up. It seems to be going up and, if you're sick, you're sick, I guess.
Yeah, we always make sure.
Can you
that-
carry sick time?
You can carry up to a certain limit, yes, but you do like cap out.
Do you find that is attributing to the sick time?
Well, no, I can't say definitively, because if you have too much that you can't carry, you get 50%, you can sell it and get 50% of it.
Or use it and get 100%?
True,
Is that
but
right?
yes,
Okay,
You can have 240 in your bank January 1st.
but if you go over 240, you can sell it back for 50 cents on the dollar.
Correct.
Or use it for 100% on the dollar.
Correct.
that's an interesting thought process, especially since you're getting ready to go into contract negotiations. I'm glad that you picked up on that. that may be something that you want to examine moving forward with the next contract.
Is the same hold true for vacation?
Vacation, you have to use or lose, or sell 1 for 1.
But you can sell 1 for 1? What about Kelly time?
Kelly time, no. Comp time, yes, you can sell comp time 1 for 1 as
Well,
well.
the same thing.
The one thing
No,
that
comp time and Kelly time we treat
Oh,
differently.
you treat them differently, okay.
What's 1 for 1 mean?
You get to buy it back. We buy it back from you, 1
Oh,
for
okay.
1. Whereas sick, you have to sell 2 sick days to get 1 day pay.
Oh, okay.
So 100% on the comp time. 50% if you go over on sick time. And vacation is use or lose,
Use or lose 1 for, but you can sell it too.
but you can sell it up to, but it has to be sold in that year.
Yeah, you have to sell it by November 15th of every year so that I know how much money we have at the end of the year. And personal days you use or lose. You don't sell them ever, personal days.
Within a year.
You get 4 a year. You get 1 a quarter, basically.
In addition to sick.
Correct.
Okay.
the way the Kelly days are written up in the agreement is that you must use the Kelly days in the quarter that you earn them. So there's no waiting till the end of the year and everybody's using.
I'm not prolonging this, but I've got to educate myself. If you need to staff a shift, can that officer say, I want to take comp time to work that shift? Or does he have to get paid for that shift?
Special unit. Yeah, special units can do that, but patrol unit cannot.
Special units
Mhm.
can do it, but patrol can't,
Right.
okay?
You have the ability to change that.
Oh, I know.
So,
I think,
But I don't understand, but I know.
but the past practice.
Yeah, I got you.
let me make one suggestion. If you have more questions for either Kathy or the chief, I'd wait till the end, okay? Month-end report.
I'll be quick, since we've been here a little while. Payroll expenses were just about 4% under budget. 6% once we received the special detail refund. Benefit expenses were 27% under budget, but we do have a couple of large payments due at the end of the year for insurances. Vehicle expenses were 11.5% under budget. We're still waiting on some install charges for the vehicle replacements for the new cars, so that should probably be right on target, with the exception of gasoline. We're 12% under budget. We'll probably keep that unless the prices go up before the end of the year. Other expenses were 12% over budget. That has a lot to do with grant-related items that came in 24 that should have been in 23. Bottom line is we're about 10% under budget. My surplus estimate, I've increased that a little bit. I was saying that we would probably have a surplus of about 150,000. I'm gonna add 115 to that as well because of the extra pension money, the Act 205 money that we received. We only expected 300,000, we got 415,000. And then with the accreditation manager leaving the last quarter, we saved $30,000 in salary and benefits. And again, with Pilata not being replaced this entire year, we saved 150,000 for salary and benefits.
What about the school district? Because the 75 wasn't in there.
Yeah, it's in this estimate.
And is that,
Yeah, and so we should have it definitely an expected surplus of 265, maybe a little bit more. I still have some, I'm not quite sure how many uniform bills are gonna come in. And there was another one, I forget what line item it was, but so we're at least having a $265,000 surplus.
and how does that compare to previous years?
Previous years, they're like 100, maybe 150, sometimes it's 50. But it's always has to do with like a work comp issue where someone's out for a while.
Right.
We're not paying their salary, and if they're in a special unit, we're not replacing them. So if it was a traffic safety unit or a detective unit, in Officer Bellata's case, I don't know if he was the 5th person on all the time or whatever, but we saved quite a bit of money. Obviously, the shifts were a little shorter, short-staffed, but if we replace him, that money is in the budget for 2025.
Let's move on to PPU reports. Although we sort of talked that out.
East Goshen, Westtown for the month of October was 47.83% for Westtown and 52.17% for East Goshen, which is significantly outside of the desired ratio. But since the townships have an agreement, we're continuing to take traffic enforcement each shift for one of the sectors and push it across the line to East Goshen. And even though we're doing that, we still do not reach our desired ratio.
And that desired ratio is 44.5 and 55.5. Okay. Public comment. And with that,
I want one comment. I want to thank you for allowing this meeting to go on like it has, because I think a lot of valuable knowledge has been obtained by asking the questions and getting the answers so that we can better understand with I think the contract is coming up and different things. I've certainly gotten enlightened on some things. And just one quick thing that I love to dispel things. And several officers have come up to me and said, why is the police commission going to reduce the midnight shift to 3 people? Well, I can say this, that the police commission that I'm on, that we've never had any discussion about that whatsoever. So put that to bed. And yes, I move we adjourn.
I'm confused where that rumor came.
Oh, wait till next month's rumors.
thank you for all for coming.
Thank you. Great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Should be an agenda item.
What's that? Rumors? Oh, man. He just can't